Hello, everyone. My name is Jean Gallagher, founder of Discover Rising Tides, and welcome to Discover Rising Tides, How the Outside Makes the Inside Better, where we explore the importance of the outdoors in maintaining life balance. And through this series, we'll be talking with women business owners to understand their journey. And today I am excited to introduce again, Jana Niksa. Hi, Jana, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm so excited for this. This is Jana part 2.
Yay.
Because we were so busy talking about your business and we really didn't get to talk about the outside. And I think that we probably weren't supposed to until today.
You know what? I think that just sounds so perfect, as things do when we let go and just let it happen as it should, right?
I think so. Yes, definitely. So give us a quick bio, and then we're going to talk just briefly about, just to remind people, remind the listeners about what you do, why you do, and how you do. And then let's dive in.
Okay. So I'm a little bit long-winded, right? Because
welcome to the team.
I did spend 20 years in sales. So I like to talk, but I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. So I am Jana Niksa, the authentic sales coach. And so I spent 21 years as a top performing sales executive in actually the medical industry. And it's so funny because I had to do a lot of really, when I became a coach, like looking at what did I do that was so different, right? Because after I sort of figured out my way, no matter where I went, no matter what I sold, no matter who I was talking to, like it just worked. And so I had to trace it back to this point of like, what was that? Because it didn't start out that way. Like I was crying daily for about 2 years. Like, what have I done? I'm so far from home. I don't know anybody. This is terrible. And then all of a sudden, I really just decided, and there was a lot of different parameter, like things that came into this decision. But obviously what they taught me about how to sell wasn't working for me at all. And so I decided to do it my way. And that was a big turning point in my career. And so, years and years later, I realized that so many people have a lot of blocks around sales. Like, ew, I don't want to be sleazy. Ugh, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to manipulate people. And so I felt like, gosh, there's an opportunity here because I was able to do this for I think I've tallied up over 40,000 sales calls. And I never had to do that. I had never had to be that used car sleazy salesperson. And so part of my calling, which maybe we can get into, is to help people, particularly female entrepreneurs, learn to share who they are, what they're about, who they serve, why they do what they do, without feeling any of that, just to be able to like do it clearly, confidently, and concisely. And so that's
with integrity.
Really what I do.
With integrity.
Yeah. There's no reason. One of the big things I tell people is like, you shouldn't have to convince anybody of anything. It's not about that. Like when you show up and you hold space for another person, especially like on a discovery call or, these scenarios where you have very intimate conversations, there's no convincing or manipulation that needs to, you just need to be there for that person and hear them. And when they feel that, that's where the magic is. Not backing somebody into a corner or, manipulating them like only 3 spots left or, whatever, all of these things. So many coaches have been trained that that's the way. I'm here to break up those patterns and let people lean more into who they are so they can do it their way and not the way.
I like that, their way and not the way. And that takes courage and vulnerability to be able to say, it's okay to be different. And it's okay to figure out what works better for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so just a quick recap too, how do you help people and how does that work?
So I mostly work with coaches, consultants, and healers, service-based entrepreneurs in their sales process. So everything from messaging, because I think, again, we're just programmed with like, this is how you have to say it. It needs to be 10K in 10 days and, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I help people really lean in to, one of my big questions I ask is, let's say you got $1 million in the bank. So it's not about how do I need to say things? How do I get clients? How do I, put something out there that they need, they want to buy, and just more like, how do I really want this to look? Like what lights me up? And so we really start there, but then that sort of vibe is all throughout their sales process, right? So that they really get to just be them. And that's really the biggest gift we to me, there's two big things we can really do. And one is to be who we are fully. And the other is to listen and let others be who they are fully. And so that's a big part of what I do with my clients. It's sort of like deprogram them from some of these things that people think they have to do, and getting so caught up in manipulation and force, and just more of a feminine approach, I guess.
So we were talking a little bit before we started, and I had this whole page of notes based upon our last conversation, because I wanted to make sure we didn't duplicate or we talked further on, and I'm throwing them away, and we're going to talk about something different. Or I really want to take the time to talk about the outdoors and the nature part, because something that you just said too is really important. And I think that if we're going to be authentic with ourselves, or it's important to also talk to people about what does life look outside of the work hours, and what is that, and how do we show up authentically for ourselves in order to show up authentically for our job or our business? And how important is that? And how does that connect to functioning of what we do?
Oh my gosh, so much there. I wouldn't be here today doing this. I would have never left my successful sales career had it not been connecting and coming home to a bigger part of something bigger than me. I didn't even know what it was at the time. And a lot of that was getting in nature and going for walks and just re-establishing a connection that I'm sure at some point I had, but lost long ago. And, whether it's meditation or practicing mindfulness or, being out in nature, I love this idea of freedom. Like you just said, like, let's not go with a plan. Like, let's just do what follow that inspiration, follow that joy and that happiness. And being in nature for me is one of the quickest ways to reconnect with that in a world that's telling you have to do it this way, and all the shoulds and your to-do lists and all of these things. You get back into that connection with nature. It just lends itself for you to connect more with yourself, and just truths start bubbling up, out of nowhere. And that is really the way I want to co-create my business. I don't want to do it like somebody else's. I don't want to model my success exact. I know the whole quote of like success leaves clues, which I understand and I get that, but I think we've taken that way too far into this whole like plug and play. This is what you need to do in order to be successful. And to me, it's really coming back home to yourself and connecting that's going to make you more successful.
So you mentioned lost, and in the process of being lost, or the process of losing a connection, I think it might be important to just take a moment to talk about, because it happens without us knowing. We're so busy, we're so on the hamster wheel, and we're so entrenched in hitting those goals or hitting those markers. Do we really even realize that we've lost what we really need?
I didn't know. It's sort of like a fish swimming in water. Like, we don't even know like what we're not connected to, what we are connected to, until we sort of step outside of that, and then it really becomes apparent, right? I think so much of our society is still asleep, and
Mhm.
they don't know that they're just going, like you said, on the hamster wheel, just so busy that they don't even value having space, first of
Mhm.
all, to even know that there's something else to come home to. And
It
I'm
takes
just,
more effort to make space on your calendar for yourself than it does to make space on your calendar for a job or business responsibility.
for sure, for sure. And for me, this happened while I was still in my sales job and in corporate America. And I had checked all the boxes of what it means to be successful, even down to like having my second child. It was like, okay, I'm all done. Now all we need is the dog, which we have now, and it's like, and I felt empty. And I'm just so grateful to have explored that, because I think a lot of people feel that and they numb it out, or they, sort of talk themselves out of it. Whereas I just finally was brought to my knees and just like, okay, there's more. There's got to be more. And that's really what began my journey of where I am today. I would not be here had I not actually listened.
Mhm.
And I think it's really difficult because you have to for me, I'm such an achiever and such a go-getter, action taker person, but I reached the end of my list. I
Mm.
had the great job, the house, the husband, the kids, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm lost now. And so that's when, nature came into my life. That's when meditation came into my life. Like I needed other ways to fill my cup, because all the ways that I was told or programmed or
Mhm.
whatever to the happiness and success, it wasn't it. And so you kind of have to take the road less traveled at that point. And sad to say, back then I didn't even know about the coaching industry. Like I was sort of on my own. I mean, this was 2012,
Mhm.
2013, maybe 2014 when I had Evie, my second little girl. I was just like doing it all on my own, just sort of figuring out my way. So I don't know if your audience can relate with that, but I'm just so grateful now that we do have coaches and people out there to sort of help you lean in, because
Yeah, I think that really was is a common theme for many people, because it was not normal mainstream to reach out to and ask for help for somebody in whatever avenue of your personal or business life, to reach out to a coach for that. It wasn't normal to do that. You just had to withstand and power through that. And so when you started to realize that you needed to be in nature and go outside, what did that look like for you? And how has that developed and changed? And what difference did it make for you?
I think it started first with just walks, just me on walks. And it just gave me that time to just breathe and reflect and connect. And, I didn't know at the time what I know now about nature and the vibration and, being barefoot in the grass and all of the magical things. It was just me really just following my intuition, and it didn't make sense.
And
But
I like
then
what you said. Can I interrupt you for just a second?
yeah, of
I
course.
really like what you said, just walks, because it's not complicated. Where COVID came and everybody and their brother brought a Peloton,
You're right.
right? So there's nothing about outside when you're sitting on a Peloton, and it's all just very programmed
Mhm.
and complicated and pressure driven. Interesting message there, but just walks is so simple.
It is. and I think, speaking of programs, I think we are programmed that it needs to be more, complicated. Right. And that was all it was. And then that turned into more meditation, right? Whether it was a walking meditation or meditation at home, meditation outside, but just a way for me, it makes me emotional, like just to really know thyself. And I up until that point, I thought I knew me, but I really didn't, because I remember the question all those years of, what's your hobbies? What do you like to do? And I hated that question because I didn't have a lot. Like, I'm like hanging out with friends, shopping. I really didn't have anything. It just felt so empty. And so, that was sort of the beginning of me. Now I love that question. I'm like, how much time do you have? But back, it was really embarrassing. I remember it being like a point of like anxiety, because I'm like, this is really sad.
But it's so normal, especially if you're working working extremely hard, or you're in a very highly driven environment, to not have any outside interests, other than, because all you do is you get up, you work, you go to bed, you get up, you work, and somewhere in between you have a couple of meals.
Yeah.
So there isn't time or bandwidth to develop a hobby. And then all of a sudden you retire or stop working, and you have no practiced interests or no habits outside of your work environment, and you're really lost, or you're no longer defined by anything.
Right. And that, that is a state, unfortunately, I think a lot of people still live in. And until you really be still and answer that call of, there's, it started with, there's just more for you, Jana. There's more for you. And I just started listening. And as much as we want it, like, where, okay, well, here's all the steps. This is exactly how it's going to look. And here's where you're going to be. It was truly like breadcrumbs. Like, okay, well, that's the next thing. Okay, well, that's the next. And then I started to get a message like, there's more, you need to help people, and that was another year-long journey of like, how, I don't even know. Like, it just, but that's sort of the way this process, from what I understand and have talked to many, many people, that it just sort of works that way. And it's just really that willingness to go to be. And then things start to unfold, and you can't force it. It's sort of like a flower, right? You can't like make it bloom. Like, it just sort of happens as it needs to in the time. And your job is just to be. And then it just expands. But for me personally, and for anybody else out there that's like, oh, that was really tough. And it still is, it still is, especially with my business, like, because so many of us, whether it's just innate in us, which I think for me, a lot of it is, but it's also learned. It's all about taking action. It's all about moving. It's all about go, 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 hustle culture. Like, the early bird catches the worm. And I've had to really reprogram myself around that. And
the bird that's been outside catches the worm.
exactly. And so, you flash forward to now. So that was a long process, 10 years. But now, from all the different things I've read, it all makes sense, like how magical it is out there and why. I mean, that's our true vibration. I mean, that's really where we're meant to be. And, or whether you're walking barefoot in the grass or just sun, like, I didn't know how activating it is for us. But I mean, there's so much to it now, and so many beautiful studies. My background's in science, and I'm hugely spiritual now, but, I still love to see, like, yes, it all is the same. Like, it used to be, you had science over here and spirituality over here. And now it's like a circle, like they kind of are two sides of the same coin. And I
Mhm.
just love that. So, and I love to share that with my clients too, because I feel like I attract a lot of clients that are also, more of that logically minded. And when they can see how these things actually, it's not just a tree hugger, like I literally hug trees now, like I do, because I know now that there's benefits to that. And it's just really interesting how, coming full circle, um, how the science is now supporting something that I just sort of intuitively knew I needed at one point.
So the last 3 weeks, well, 3 weeks in June, now that we're in July, I spent in Maine on our property, and it rained a ton. I grew up there, never seen so much rain in my life in 1 month, and it's still raining. However, I could have cared less because I worked part-time. I chose when I worked, but I was barefoot most of the time. And I've realized that here where I am in California, it's so June was pretty temperate for this time of year, but right now it's 100 degrees. It's really hard to go barefoot when it's 100 degrees. It's really hard. and so just the act of being barefoot, but also we were outside most of the time. We were living in our airstream on our property as we build. And so we're outdoors a lot. And so when I came home, I've had this adjustment before, but when I came back to California, I felt kind of stuck, and I realized it's because I've been inside and I needed to be outside. And your body and your existence gets used to physically being outdoors with the only ceiling are the trees and the sky. And what a difference that makes.
Exactly. It's kind of like, I did the Whole30 a long time ago.
What is that?
It's where you just eat whole foods, like
Oh, okay.
actual real food. Crazy. I know. But, the contrast of it was I didn't realize I had issues with dairy. I didn't realize I had issues with, gluten, I guess, maybe. I don't know. But the point is, like, when you don't have it, you notice,
Mhm.
and so that's what's so hard for a lot of people if you don't get to experience that contrast. Like if you don't take it away and then try to reintroduce it
Mhm.
or whatever it may be, you don't even realize that there's an issue, it's just normal. And so it's so great that you have that contrast where you can notice, where so many other people just think this is who I am. This is just how it is because
Yeah,
they
and then
haven't.
it's easy to forget that you felt that way unless you continue to incorporate the positive thing into your situation.
Exactly. And you do, and that I'm glad you said that because that's another thing I wanted to touch on. Being the doer that I am, my self-care routine for about maybe a year ago, I was realizing it became another to do. It
Mhm.
wasn't about the experience of it. It was, did I get it done?
Mhm.
And so I had to like reel it back in again. And so, that's where I think so much of this, being in nature, but just self-care in general, you really have to continuously check in
Mhm.
because it's sort of like the person who works out super hard and then sits around and drinks beer and eats pizza all day. Like it doesn't work that way. And so, whether it's like you did and you said, I'm not going to do the notes, I'm just going to roll with it.
Mhm.
Or it's me like, you know what, the rest of the day, I'm just going to do me. And I'm going to take, it's just that constant checking in with yourself. It's not just a one and done thing in the morning. It really you have to be really connected with who you
Mhm.
are and what your needs are in that moment. Maybe it isn't to write another email. Maybe it is to go for a walk. Maybe it is to go sit in the sun or
Mhm.
just put your feet in the grass. But, you know, I was starting to treat some of my self-care because I was like, oh, I know this. I do this. This is who I am. It became another thing and not the thing. if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that, don't do another email, go outside, but that also can't be identified with procrastination. So there's this fine line in the sand or the dirt in your bare feet. There's a fine line. There's a fine line in the sand that says, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to go fluff off for the rest of the day because I think that's what I need, versus doing it because you should. Right?
Yes.
So how would people identify, or how would people really say, well, here, this is not procrastination, this is necessary, versus I'm just fluffing off because I don't want to do those 4 things on my list?
Well,
asking for a friend.
Funny. Well, a couple of things come to mind. The biggest thing I tell my clients, whether we're talking, because this could also be applied to fear, right?
Sure. Okay.
There's a difference between not in alignment with me and how I want to run my business, and fear, the discomfort, right? And it's all about discernment. And so again, it's really having that conscious decision making of, what really is the highest good for all right now, myself, my clients, my business. And so I seriously doubt your higher self is going to say it's watching Netflix and chilling all day, right? But sometimes it really is, taking that pause, taking that afternoon, taking my kids to the pool or whatever it may be, to just, but you have to know, you have to develop that communication with that part of you, so that not only do you have the clarity, but you also have the trust of this is the highest good for all involved. And so it's one of those things where once you start to open up that channel of communication and that relationship that's always there, it's just whether or not you want to listen. and knowing when that voice is that higher voice versus, the ego saying, yeah, you don't want to do that because, and there's a different energy to it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And so when you're coaching people and you're integrating this thought process within the coaching piece too, because you're not only telling them how to be better in their sales part, but how to be better in their full business piece as well. Do you see any patterns of maybe pushback, or any patterns of processing that people struggle with when they're trying to incorporate an outdoors piece or taking care of yourself piece into their busy day? Do you find that they're really hesitating to take it on out of fear also, or for whatever reason?
Yes, I do. This is probably not going to sound super loving, but it's my truth. They're like, I don't have time. And I'm like, if you don't have time to love on you, then what kind of life are you living? So I'm kind of a hard, when it comes to that, because we all have the same amount of time in a day. And really, it's all about prioritization and choices.
So if you don't have enough time to love on you, say it again.
I said, if you don't have enough time to love on you, then what kind of life are you leading? And, when they push, I'm like, then get up, because I'm a big morning person. So it's easy for me to say, but I'm like, then get up 20 minutes earlier, and start your day with that morning sunrise walk, or, out in nature, meditating, or whatever it may be, because we have to make that time. And there's really no, and it takes them a bit, because you have to unwind the winding that I feel like we all go through, of you have to do X amount of things in a day, and you have to do this, and this, and this. And, but as you unwind and open up, all it takes is a few ahas in those spaces. And then people are like, oh, I see now that I'm co-creating this whole thing. And the more I spend time in my being, the more effective my doing is. So I can do and run my circles, or I can be and then gather, center, connect. And then I do from that space. And that's what moves mountains. Because otherwise we just hustle ourselves into total burnout. And so it takes a little bit of that hard, tough love at first for them, because I am so not concerned about that extra 20 minutes that you're going to get of sleep, and far more concerned about you making that connection so that you can start to see how this will translate into your life and how it shows up in so many different ways.
I love that. I love that. And it's not easy to break habits.
No. It's really what I have found in my life and many of my clients is it's really tough to do 99% of something. But when you do 100% of it, in other words, you have an identity shift, right? Like you're no longer the person that does it 99% of the time. Like you're the person this is the person that does the thing, right? I'll never forget a coach was saying, he used the example of smoking cigarettes. Like there's far more power if somebody offered you a cigarette and you go, no, thanks, I don't smoke. Like that's a new identity, right? Versus no, thanks, I'm trying to quit. So that's that 99%, right? I'm trying to quit. Whereas the other person, 100% is like, I don't smoke. And so when that is a big part of breaking habits, is identifying and fully with the person that I am, the person that gets up at 5:30 in the morning. I am the person that moves my body every day. I am the person, and not I'm trying to be that person.
Ooh,
like that's who you are. And it's far easier to break habits when we commit fully to a new identity of who we really want to be, and not we're trying. In fact, I'm almost to the point where I don't even want to hear that word. Like even my kids are like, oh, I don't want to hear try. Like, I don't want to hear try. Because if you really want something to be different, then you have to be different. And not just some of the time, but if that's something you want, you have to do it. No matter, it's like brushing your teeth. It's a non-negotiable. And that's, oh, that's funny. And so thank you. I'm like, that's funny.
But what's interesting is that, if somebody's going to you as a coach for their business and they're wanting to change their sales process or learn how to be better at what they're doing, you're going to require that they change what they're doing in order to be better at what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean,
so there's that 100%, right? If you want to make changes to your business, you hired me as your coach, and I'm going to tell you that your sales process can be improved if you do this and this and this differently, more authentically. People are going to go, that's going to be really hard, but okay, because I've asked you to do this. But if you said to somebody, you need to not just look at your business life, but how you are with yourself and your being, you need to make these other changes and these shifts. They're going to go, I can try to do that. So from the business side, they're like, sure, absolutely, Jana, that's why you're here. I'm going to do this. But if you suggest it on the personal side, they can be like, well, okay, I'll try, but I have all these other things going on. Do you see that?
I do. And unfortunately, we all have our different motivations to change, right? Sometimes it is personal. Sometimes it is your business, but it really is important. If it's something that I say often, and I don't even know where this came from, but if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And so it really is key to, if you want things to be different, then you have to be the change.
Mhm.
You know, it's not going to happen around you. It has to happen within you.
Mhm.
And so, you know, whether that is you know, in your personal life, or if that's within your business, like complaining about it or trying to make other people different. I mean, that's just not how it works. It's an
Mhm.
inside out thing, you know, success, happiness, all of it's an inside job. So you can spend all the time you want trying to make this person act this way and this situation go that way. But ultimately, it really comes down to you making the shifts you need to make in order to experience and attract
Mm.
in the life that you want. So I really try to empower my clients. We spend a lot of time on this, and they come to me for sales coaching, but you know, that question around, did I say this, or was it when I was talking to somebody earlier, about if I already had $1 million?
Mm.
Yeah. Like he said to me, he goes, you know, I hired you for sales coaching, but that was the most profound journaling that I've ever done, because it's always been about what's the easiest, what can make me the most money, what makes the most sense, what am I easy best at, and not just, if money were no object, like what would I really, how would I really want to show up and serve? And, you know, so we really do try to do a lot of that type of introspection.
Mm.
And the more you do that, the more you're bought into it too.
Mm.
I believe the more you make that connection, the more it becomes like water, like you have to have it.
Mhm.
And so it's really just a matter of making yourself at first, right? It's sort of like brushing your teeth when you're a child. Like at first, your parents brush your teeth, 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 brush your teeth. But then eventually it just becomes an extension of who you are.
Mhm.
And so all of that, those growing pains to develop a new habit or to stop something or to start something new, it's just temporary. If you can get through those growing pains
Mm.
of doing it differently, then you come out the other side and you see, oh, this is so much better. But then that sets you up for the next time, because you're like, I've been here. I know what this looks like. I can do it again. And I
Mhm.
know that once I cross through, it'll be that much better. So to answer your question very long-windedly, um, it takes some staying on them at first to get them to buy in.
Mhm.
But once they go just far enough to begin to see how much better it can be, then they're in. So it's just a matter of getting them to cross that first bridge.
Mm. That's great. So how do you show up differently? Or how do you see your clients show up differently?
Well, for me, like we were talking about before we got on here, a big thing that I've been working on is more of just being in my business, checking those feelings that are coming up of, is this a should, or is this something I really want to do in this moment? And for me, it's been a moment to moment thing. Even though I have this, I don't want to say figured out, but for lack of a better word, personally, I've had this pretty well established,
Mhm.
right? My spiritual practice, connection, all these things. But building a business brought on a whole new like gamut of challenges and fears. And the only thing I've known up until, you know, I started this coaching business is if I needed something to happen, I was going to make it happen.
Mhm.
Right. Like in sales, you know, if my manager said, hey, you're X amount behind in quota, then I would just grab my list and, okay, here's where I need to go. These are the appointments I'm going to boom, 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 check, box done. And, you know, it's all done. And so it doesn't work that way anymore. Not for me
Mhm.
anyway. I personally believe we're in a different energy now that's really calling us to check in more,
Mhm.
to not fall into the fear of doing, to do more of that being and then act. And sometimes it doesn't even make sense. So not only are you being more, you're taking action and like, okay, I guess, sure. But then you see, again, just like I coach my clients, as you come out the other side in the hindsight, it's like, oh, okay. So now that makes more sense. So, it's definitely an ongoing practice for me. And some days I'm better at it than others. And that's where grace comes in. Some days I get to the end of the day and I'm kind of doing a daily review and I'm like, oh, Jana, you were way in your doing. And it's like, but that's okay. And so, just constantly being present with, your motivations and your intention. And then when you're not, when you miss the mark, being able to just forgive yourself is so powerful, because I think that's another trap we fall into. I did, especially in the beginning of my spiritual journey, because I would still do things and I'm like, oh, Jana, you should know better. You should know better. So now I'm not just upset about the thing I did. Now I'm equally, if not more, upset about the fact that I fell for it and I should know better. So now I got another story, multi-layered on the original story. And it's really important that we forgive ourselves too when we don't do it right. When we don't do it the way that we know is the highest.
I like that. Practice and grace.
Yeah. It's not a one and done thing, unfortunately. It hasn't been for me. Maybe for others, it's like I woke up and things were just different. But for me, it is an ongoing reminding of myself and reeling myself back in, taking that break when I need to. What is really going to serve me right now?
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This has been fantastic. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm so glad that we were able to coordinate our calendars to make this happen. So thank you. Thank you for spending the time talking with me and with everybody listening. And I truly enjoyed this.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much for having me again. And I'm so glad we could dive more into this self-care, the nature, that aspect of things, because it's equally, actually, it's more important than, our story and who we serve and all of those things. It's the foundation, and it's the place that you can always come back to. Because I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I feel like we do sort of lose our way sometimes, like maybe in a launch, or, with my mom who's been, sick these last few months or whatever it is. And we do sort of go off the rails. But if you have that, it's like one of my spiritual teachers, like, do you need to come? And I'm like, no, I know what to do. I just need to do it. And so even those of us that have been doing this for a decade also have to, what's happened? Where have I been? Sometimes I'm like, where have I been? I don't know if you feel that way, but I'm like, oh my gosh, this week went by. Where have I been?
Exactly. Yes, you do. You just catch yourself. But if you hadn't put the work in beforehand, you would not have caught that was off.
Right. There would be nothing to catch. You would just be continuing to spin out. So I'm just so grateful that I have a home base.
So thank you. Until next time, we should do this again.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Jeannie.
You're welcome. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening today. Today's show is sponsored by Seaside Solutions, my financial services company. As a business owner, it's easy to be pulled in many different directions, and often taking care of yourself plummets to the bottom of the list. For me, I find myself outside to reground. My time outdoors helps me manage my day more effectively and be more present for my clients. Through this, Discover Rising Tides was born. At Seaside Solutions, we truly believe that education is the foundation of financial wellness. Our primary focus is to provide guidance that is designed to help you achieve your long-term financial goals and visions. Working with a plan allows space for doing more things that you love, like being outside to make the inside better. If I can help you create or realign your plan, or if you would like to be added to my weekly newsletter, please let me know. This week's topic was 5 ways to set more achievable goals. Your referral means the big, beautiful world to me. And if I can help, please let me know. And thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.